beautiful butterflies, and welcome to the first official episode of Once Upon a Spoiler. I am your host, Samantha Sanderson, almost Elliot. I am 26 years old, and yes, we still binge watch Once Upon a Time, but as we all know, that is one of the best things about this incredible show. Every single time you go back and rewatch an episode, you notice something that you never saw before. I am incredibly happy right now. I'm so excited that we're doing this, and I'm so glad you're all here. You guys, I have to be honest with you. I almost cried whenever the intro episode went live. I'm the one who did it, but once I saw it, I just started tearing up. It happened again whenever I saw this podcast on both Spotify and Stitcher, but both times it was one of those situations where you're so filled with all of this emotion and all you want to do is cry, but you can't because you're still just too excited. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm so glad that you're all here joining me and listening, and I'm so excited to officially start this journey with you. Real quick, I would just like to take a moment to say thank you to Traffic Dubstep for the intro and outro music. The track is called Hibernation, and I will add the link for you all in the description of this episode if you would like to check them out. There's a lot of fun stuff to listen to that just really gets you moving. It was very difficult to decide which one to use, but once I heard it, I just couldn't get it out of my head. Moving on from that, I would like to give you all a quick rundown of how this is going to work. Once a week, we are going to watch one episode of Once Upon a Time. We are going to come together to break down what happened in that episode, and as we're breaking it down, I'm going to throw in little tidbits of information that they said while I was watching the commentary. Obviously, I couldn't include everything. I think it would be very beneficial if you guys went back and watched it for yourselves, but I am just going to throw in a lot of stuff that I really found interesting and just wanted to share with you guys. We will also go over stuff spotted in the background. We'll talk about the bloopers and deleted scenes. I'll go over my thoughts and theories. Eventually, we will do those butterfly episodes that I discussed in the intro, but I decided that we are going to wait a little while until we actually start to get in some questions, comments, and things like that. And more than likely, whenever we do that, depending on how many questions we have, we might end up doing like a couple episodes of Once Upon a Time for that butterfly episode of Once Upon a Spoiler. It really just depends, but we'll see how that goes. I do need to go ahead and let you all know that the DVD set that I have for the first season, DVD number 1, only has commentary for the pilot episode. I'm not sure if that's different for any other DVD sets that you can buy, but that's the way it is for me. And they may have just decided for this to be the way. I'm not sure. I will find out soon, and of course I will let you all know. If any of you out there listening knows which set has commentary for every episode, let me know. And if you do know for sure too, if they just flat out don't have it, I would really appreciate it if you guys would let me know about that too. You can let me know by sending me an email. The email address is onceuponaspoilerpod@gmail.com. Again, that's onceuponaspoilerpod@gmail.com. Please let me know if you guys know which set of DVDs has commentary for every episode. And if they don't, then I would really appreciate that knowledge as well. Just shoot me an email real quick and I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. There also wasn't any bloopers or deleted scenes on this here first DVD for season 1, but I do know for a fact that those are going to be coming on future DVDs for this season. In the meantime, I will continue my search for more content for us to discuss. I can tell you for sure that YouTube has a lot of wonderful gag reel videos, and they are absolutely wonderful to watch, and you really just get a sense of how much fun they had while they were on the set. We will also be keeping track of a few things, one in particular to start off with, and I'm sure that list will grow as we go along, but for now, it is going to be the logo of Once Upon a Time and whatever we see hidden in the trees. I'm honestly thinking of keeping track of something else, but we'll talk about that whenever we get to it in this episode. You all out there listening will have hopefully watched the episode, well, the entire show really, previous to listening to this here podcast, because we are definitely going to be discussing a lot of spoilers, so be prepared for that. Now, I am going to be watching the show on the DVDs that I bought on Amazon. I have the first 2 seasons. They came together as a little bundle deal. For the first season, there's 5 discs. Each disc has 4 to 5 episodes as well as the bonus features. I haven't popped in all the DVDs into the DVD player yet, but we will find out what DVD has what bonus features as we go along. And if you guys have the same set with me, then cool. We're really watching this together. I promised you all that I have silenced my cell phone, and I'm all set up in my closet with my water, so what do you say we just go ahead and dive right into this episode? This is Season 1, Episode 1, named Pilot. It was directed by Mark Mylod, edited by Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz. I'm terribly sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. I'm really trying my best here. I'm just not that good at it. Ironically enough, though, the editors were also the commentators, so that worked out great. The original air date for this episode was October 23rd, 2011. And here we are watching it again in 2021, because that's how we do. So the episode starts with the following words appearing on the screen. Once upon a time, there was an enchanted forest filled with all the classic characters we know, or think we know. One day, they found themselves trapped in a place where all their happy endings were stolen. Our world. This is how it happened. I would just like to go ahead and say just how much I love that they chose to open up this entire new world that they have created. It's absolutely genius, and I thought it was fantastic. So the first thing we see is someone riding on a horse through a gorgeous path. It starts to snow, and we very quickly find out that it is Prince Charming coming to kiss Princess Snow awake. The dwarfs all look absolutely incredible in their costumes. You see the glass coffin that Snow was placed in by the evil queen, and honestly, I think it's really pretty, as is her dress, of course. Charming then asks the dwarfs to let him say goodbye because they all think she's gone. They don't know that she's been placed under a sleeping curse, and when he kisses her, the curse is broken, a waft of magic sweeps through them and the land all around them. Snow opens her eyes, looks at Charming, and says, "You found me." Charming then says, "Did you ever doubt I would?" And honestly, when she says the glass coffin gave me pause, I personally think that line was incredibly funny. I'm so glad that they threw it in there as like playful banter in that moment. And of course, Charming replies with, "I will always find you," which will become a famous line used throughout the show, as we all know, and it's adorable. So, as I was listening to the commentators, they said that the glass coffin was indeed made out of a tree that they found in the woods. It was really snowing during that shooting, so poor Snow, aka Jennifer Goodwin, was out there in the cold in that dress, freezing. She's really a trooper. They also used a helicopter to get the above shots for that scene. You know, obviously, I'm pretty sure they do this for a lot of TV shows and movies and whatnot, but it's still pretty genius, and it's a gorgeous view. The next thing we see is Snow White and Charming getting married, and that scene is beautiful. The dress with all of the feathers on it, the prince was looking very sharp, the archway was perfect, the stained glass is absolutely gorgeous, and it adds a lot of wonderful color to this scene, which I'm sure was very intentional given that everything about that day and that moment is about to get a lot darker. I just loved everything about it. I feel like you're gonna hear me say that I love something a lot, but that's just my honest opinion of how incredible this show is, and everyone that worked on it did a phenomenal job, and I'm gonna give them credit, where I can. So anyway, Doc had to get Grumpy to clap. I thought that was really funny. Grumpy is a great character too, just throwing that out there really quick. This scene here with the evil queen, also known as Regina, is just perfect. She brings so much confidence, it practically oozes out of her. The way she executes her character is flawless, and I absolutely love everything about her. I am also going to go ahead and tell you right now that Regina is by far my favorite character on the show, hands down. I feel like a lot of true Once Upon a Time fans feel that way, and there are a lot of reasons, but that's just one more for us to get into later. And if she's not your favorite, go ahead and send me an email. Tell me who is. I would love to hear about it. And if she is, tell me why. I would love to hear about that too. Back to the episode. Snow takes action very quickly, drawing Charming's sword and pointing it at Regina and calls her an evil witch. But Charming takes the sword back and tells Regina that she has lost and is wasting her time by being there. And her smile whenever he says that is incredible. While Regina is there, a lot of people in the crowd don't seem to want to look her in the eye. And honestly, I don't blame them because she is very powerful, and I'd certainly hate to be on her bad side, which we all know what happens there anyways, let's be real. But basically, she tells Snow and Charming that she has come to bring them a gift, and that is their quote-unquote happy day, as she put it. Tells them all that soon everything they all love will be ripped away, and vows to destroy Snow's happiness, also the happiness of everyone in their land, if it is the last thing she does. Now, obviously, we don't yet know why the queen is so determined to do this to them, but we will eventually find out. Best guess is that it's got to be something big, right? Why else would someone make such a strong vow to rip away everything from everyone? Something to look forward to. I loved it too whenever she walks away and the prince is just so angry that he throws his sword at her and she uses her magic to disappear, but the sword still goes with her. How cool was that? Nice little detail too. The commentators mentioned during this part that they wanted this version of Snow White to be a grab the sword and defend herself kind of gal. And the evil queen isn't this person who is just pure evil. She is simply someone who was very wronged by Snow White. So the next thing we see is Snow and Charming fading into a picture in a book, and we finally get to meet young Henry on a bus all by himself. Where is he going, you may wonder? Why is he alone with a credit card? Oh, but no answer yet, because next up we get to meet Emma on what appears to be a blind date, but you very soon find out that, well, number one, it's her birthday, number two, she has no family, and number three, she is a bail bonds person, and this is her guy. She also has a trap set up for who we find out to really just be a total loser. And she is awesome at what she does. She's even got one of those boots on the guy's car, and she bangs his head into the steering wheel. I'm sure he was fine, but I bet that was still fun to do. So during this part, the commentator stated that they really wanted to throw us off on her first impression of Emma, and I must say, job well done, until of course she displays how strong she is. It was freezing this night as well, so whenever she followed the date night guy, it was really very cold. Next up, we see Emma coming through the door of her apartment. There's some writing on the door. It's hard to make out from far away, but the styling of the letters is really what catches my eye about it. Emma takes off her shoes, and I know that feeling, and oh my goodness is all I'm going to say about that. Moving on. She opens this box and pulls out a cupcake, and honestly, watching her blow out that candle by herself, it really tugs on your heart no matter how many times you've seen it. And during this little scene, the blue star on her cupcake is in reference to Geppetto wishing on the blue star in Pinocchio. So immediately after she blows out the candle and has made her wish, her doorbell rings, and sure enough, it's Henry. And he's coming to this woman. Keep in mind, at this point, they are essentially strangers to each other to literally change her life for the better. She just doesn't know it yet. Fun little fact that they threw in here about her apartment door, it literally says cast a spell. Somewhere in the middle of it, it's really visible whenever Emma opens the door and we find Henry there. Back to the episode, we find out that he is indeed her son, and she gave him up for adoption about 10 years prior to him walking through her door, and the simple fact that he knew she gave up a baby made her realize right then and there that it was true and he most certainly is her son. He tells Emma that he wants her to come back to his home with him. She tries to tell him that she's going to call the cops, and him being the clever kid that he is, says that he'll just tell the cops that she kidnapped him. And she knows that they'd be inclined to believe him because of the simple fact that she is indeed his birth mother, and that would be all that they would need to turn it right back on her. She then tells Henry about her ability to be able to tell when someone is lying to her. She calls him out for it, they go back and forth for a second, and then she asks him where he lives so that she can drive him back home. Another fun little fact right here, Emma's apartment view is actually a reflection on her and her life. You see, there's all this life and all of these people surrounding her, but in reality, she's all alone. Let me just say real quick, the name Storybrooke, genius. I love it. We go back to what we know to be called the Enchanted Forest, and I would like to go ahead and throw in that the way they did these flashbacks in the episodes is pure genius as well. I've always felt that they were perfectly timed, and they really helped to not only carry the story along, but they also helped us to understand what is happening currently in the story. They're always connecting in some way, and it's just fantastic and wonderful, and I love everything about it. Okay, ranch over. Back to the forest. So we see Snow holding a beautiful blue bird and look down at her belly to see that she is pregnant and glowing. Her and Charming start to talk about what the evil queen said to them on the day of their wedding. Charming is trying to make Snow feel better about the whole situation because she is clearly worried about what's to come, and honestly, I would be too. But then she tells Charming that she wants to go and see him, and boy oh boy am I excited for what's to come. Snow says that he can guarantee the safety of their child and convinces Charming to go and speak to him. He's trapped in their dungeon, so it's totally safe and harmless, right? The commentators mentioned that they added in some stuff to Emma's nursery that normally wouldn't have necessarily been found or made in the Enchanted Forest, and they just threw in like little Easter eggs such as that hot air balloon that you see in the background whenever Snow and Charming are talking. And is it just me, or did Charming sound a little like he had a head cold during this scene? And isn't his scar supposed to be on the other side of his face? I could have swore it was on the left, but it's supposed to be on the right side, right? I could be wrong, but that's just another little thing that I couldn't help but notice. Anyway. Then we open back to Emma and Henry on their drive back to Storybrooke, Maine. They start talking some in the car, and Henry is holding and reading some of his book that he takes with him everywhere. Emma asks him what it's about, but he tells her that she's not ready yet. He then begins to tell her that all of the quote-unquote fairy tales in the book are actually true and suggests that she uses her superpower on him to see if he's lying. She then says, and I love this part, just because you believe something doesn't make it true. But then Henry comes back with, that's exactly what makes it true. And he then tells her that she's in the book and she's gonna fix all his problems. That was a fun line too. Up next is a truly wonderful scene. We have Snow White and Charming with a guard, and they are walking to see this mysterious hymn we've been hearing so much about. The guard tells them not to tell him their names because as soon as he knows their names, he will have power over them as he does everyone with whom he knows the name of. They have their faces covered at first, and of course, it is the one and only Rumplestiltskin. As one could only expect, he knows immediately that it is indeed Snow White and Prince Charming that have come to pay him a visit, and more importantly, to ask him a question. So of course they want to know about the evil queen's threat and what they can do about it, but everyone knows that any deal with Rumpelstiltskin comes at a price, and for this, his price is the name of Snow White and Prince Charming's unborn child. But why her name, I wonder? We'll circle back to that later, as we will many things. Rumple is all too happy that Snow agrees to the terms of this deal, and he tells them that there is a powerful curse coming, and they will all be trapped someplace where everything they love and hold dear will be ripped away from them. He then tells them that the unborn child Snow carried was their only hope, and that they must get it to safety. He then closes his eyes and states that on its 28th birthday the child will return to them and that the final battle will begin. They then begin to walk away, but Rumple begins to yell, saying, "I want her name." Charming thinks that it's a boy, but Snow knows that it's actually a girl, so she turns back and says to Rumpelstiltskin, "Emma." Her name is Emma. And the way she said it was just absolutely amazing. Jennifer really pulls you into her emotion and her reality. She is just incredibly talented, and I love it. I love her. So during this scene, the commentator stated that they really enjoyed writing the role of Rumpelstiltskin, so much so that he became a much bigger character a lot sooner than he was originally intended to be. In the first episode, they actually only planned for him to have one scene near the end, but they fell so much in love with him and his character that he became so much a bigger part of the whole show. They also wrote the roles of Rumple and Snow specifically for Robert and Jennifer. They did mention, too, that the scene with him and Snow back and forth in the dungeon was intentionally drawn into them two specifically, as he had his agenda and she was a mother trying to protect her daughter. They also wanted to intentionally raise a lot of questions for us viewers with the first episode involving Rumple and just how exactly it is that he's connected to what all is happening. Also, the scene was filmed in a real mine. Back to the show. Emma and Henry then enter Storybrooke, and Emma gets a little frustrated with Henry because he won't tell her the address that he lives at. So she stops the car, gets out, and slams the door closed. Just as she does this, the power lines in the background spark. Then she looks up at the clock tower and realizes that it's not working. Henry then goes to try to explain to her that time is frozen in their town and that the evil queen did it with her curse. Emma asks why everyone doesn't just leave town, but then Henry explains to her that bad things happen to people who try. We finally get to meet who we are first introduced to as Archie. He is holding an umbrella as well as a leash for his dog, Pongo, who is a beautiful Dalmatian. The conversation is definitely tense, or perhaps awkward is the better way to put it, maybe? And a little more so when Henry tells Archie that it's his mother that he's with. Archie, being the kind man he is, leads Emma directly to Henry's home, which is also the home of the mayor of Storybrooke. Emma then finds out that Archie is not only Henry's therapist, but also the one and only Jiminy Cricket, which, if you ask me, makes total sense for his cursed self to be a therapist when he is basically someone else's conscience in the Enchanted Forest. And by basically, we all know that he is still his own person. He just tries to help Geppetto in any way he can, as well as Pinocchio. And I gotta be honest too, Emma and Henry's banter about Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio is just too funny. So the commentators did mention that the spark on the power line was very much intentional. Her yellow bug represented light coming into this dark and gloomy town. There is meaning behind the library being boarded up and shut off from the town beneath that clock tower. They are all closed out from their stories and their truth. Also, 815 is the flight number from Lost. And we all know that the creators of this show are the ones that indeed worked on that, so of course there's bound to be a few connections here and there. In the next scene, we are taken back to the Enchanted Forest in what appears to be basically a war room, where Jiminy himself is trying to convince Prince Charming that a fight is not the right way to go about defeating the evil queen. For a moment there, it seems that Snow White has lost hope in finding a solution until who should arrive with one but the gorgeous Blue Fairy. She has some guards bring in part of an enchanted tree and asks Geppetto to fashion it into a vessel so that escaping the curse is possible, and of course there has to be a catch. Only one person can be protected by it. Okay, so the scene when they're discussing what to do about the curse, they really wanted to mash up all of these different stories and just have them all come together. Jiminy Cricket's microphone actually translates cricket language, as we find out later that is the only language that he can speak technically now since he's been turned into a cricket. That's why whenever he's talking to other people, you'll see him either using that or something very similar. Pinocchio was carving the little wooden whale we see in many future episodes, and the inspiration for Blue's wings were that of dragonflies. Honestly, I absolutely love that. It's just beautiful. This next part is pretty heartbreaking because this is when Henry tells Emma that his mom is evil and that she only pretends to love him. But then Regina comes running through the door to hug her son, figure out who he's with and what happened. He then tells Regina that he found his real mom and runs inside to his room. Regina and Emma's reactions in that moment are just perfect and absolutely priceless. Regina is obviously not happy about it, but ironically enough, she offers Emma a drink made from apples. We find out that Regina has had Henry ever since he was 3 weeks old. The adoption was closed, no father involved, and Emma had no intentions of being involved either. Emma and Regina sit down and begin to talk and drink. Yes, alcohol, though not a lot, obviously. But they talk about Henry, and Emma tells Regina about the book, and that's something that she obviously had no idea about, and basically flat out tells Regina that Henry, knows the truth and has already begun to tell his birth mother about it. Regina acts oblivious to the situation, as one would only expect someone in her position to react. Emma leaves, but as she's walking to her car, she turns back and sees Henry watching from his bedroom window. I really like that they added that in there. It really shows that Emma, no matter how hard she may want to fight it, is beginning to truly care for this quote-unquote kid, as she likes to call him. The commentators for this scene said that they purposely did not reveal who the sheriff was in the Enchanted Forest. That was just part of the fun for them, making us wonder who some of the characters were. They also wanted us to question Henry on his home life, and is it really as bad as he says it is? They intended in making this complex on an emotional level, Regina being the working mother, but then the birth mother comes in and uproots her life. They really wanted us to see that, in a way, they are both indeed in the right. They tried to throw in as many subtle Easter eggs from the Enchanted Forest into the background of a lot of scenes, hence the red apples on the table whenever Regina and Emma are talking. And last but not least, for this little scene, Emma's red jacket is a way of connecting father and daughter, seeing as he has his red jacket in the Enchanted Forest. Okay, you guys, this blew my mind. I cannot believe that I never connected those dots before. Like, I seriously, it was one of those slap yourself in the forehead kind of moments. Like, it was right there, and it's been there the entire time. How did I not see it? Did any of you not see it? Please let me know. And if you did, then tell me that too, so I can totally feel like a failure. I'm totally joking, you guys. That's okay, we're having fun here. Alright, so the next scene opens to Emma and her yellow bug, and she finds that Henry forgot his book in her car. She knows he did this on purpose, but instead of just being able to simply turn her car around, she sees a wolf in the middle of the road, crashes her car into the city welcome sign, and the book gets blown open to the very page where Geppetto and Pinocchio are building the magical wardrobe. The camera then gets closer, and we are taken to that time and place. So for this little part, they wanted Storybrooke to not only look, but to also feel timeless. And they really did want to raise a question here. Is the wolf trying to harm Emma, or is it simply trying to keep her in town? And if you'll notice too, when the wind was blowing in the pages of the book, they wanted to show us that there is more than just one story inside of that book. Moving on, so we're taken to that time and place, and we see Geppetto and Pinocchio working. We get a gorgeous view of Snow White and Prince Charming's castle, and then we see Snow and Charming talking about how much they don't want to leave each other for 28 years. They kiss, and before they had hoped and planned, Snow goes into labor. Just as this is happening at the top of the castle, Grumpy is keeping watch, and then he sees the magic in the distance. The curse is coming. So for this part, the commentator stated that Geppetto and Pinocchio's scene when they were building the wardrobe together was reflecting upon that of Regina's vow with the curse to rip away everything everyone loves, and they represented that with Geppetto's love for his son Pinocchio. The scene between Charming and Snow before giving birth was to truly represent faith. The idea for the curse was that of a storm and Mother Nature, and honestly that, wonderful. Just fabulous. We are taken back to Storybrooke, where Emma wakes up to being inside of a jail cell, and we soon find out that she's in there for drunk driving. Ridiculous. We meet the fun Leroy and see just how grumpy he is in his cursed life. Emma then tells Sheriff Graham that there was a wolf in the middle of the road when Regina comes in saying that Henry is missing and immediately looks to Emma, surprised that she's still there in town, and begins to ask her if she knows where he's gone, which, obviously, given the current circumstances, she most certainly does not. However, Emma has a special skill in finding people, so she convinces them to let her help in exchange for her release. She does what she does best and discovers that Henry used Mary Margaret Blanchard's credit card to go online and find his birth mother. We then open up to a classroom full of children and a teacher who is revealed to be Mary Margaret Blanchard, and she is teaching the students about birds. She has some beautiful dialogue, some related to Snow and Charming, of course, but obviously she doesn't know that, before the bell rings and then Regina walks in. Clearly she's angry and begins to question Miss Blanchard with Emma right behind her. Mary keeps looking at Emma for some odd reason and then tells them that she doesn't know where Henry has gone. She then finds out that Emma is Henry's birth mother and that Henry stole her credit card. Mary then goes on to say that she never should have given Henry the book, and then continues on speaking to Regina, stating that he is indeed a special boy, but also lonely. Regina doesn't take to this lightly and is frustrated about the book, so she leaves, knocking some books over, ironically, on her way out. Most certainly on purpose. Basically telling Emma to have a nice trip out of her town. And Emma helps Miss Blanchard pick up the books. They then start talking about the reason why she gave the book to Henry in the first place, and that was to give him what he needed: hope. Emma realizes that Miss Blanchard knows where Henry may be hiding, and that is his castle. During this part, the commentator stated that Marco doesn't have a son in Storybrooke, and it is very clearly pointed out to us in the jail scene where we also meet Leroy. They try to connect Emma and Henry as much as possible, such as in their personalities. The scene with Snow and the children at school was actually the first one that they filmed. They intentionally had the student give her a pear due to Jennifer Goodwin hating apples. I think that's so funny. And perfect, right? I mean, she's Snow White. Why wouldn't she hate apples? Come on. They wanted to show Emma warming to Henry basically by showing that she wanted to make sure that he was safe before she goes back home. As Snow points out that Henry is lonely, that simply reflects back to Emma and her herself being lonely. The more she tries to fight it, the more reason she finds to want to stay due to their similarities and really her growing that connection with him. The scene where Emma and Mary Margaret really talk for the first time, they liked how Jennifer Goodwin played off that subconscious recognition. They immediately feel this connection for a reason that is completely unknown to them at that moment. They essentially talk as mother and daughter about Snow's grandson. The photo behind Jennifer Goodwin in the hallway when her and Emma are talking is actually her sister. And last but not least, Mary basically tells Emma that Henry wants to know the same thing she does. Why would anyone give me away? Yet another connection between them. Once again, we are taken back to the Enchanted Forest, where this time Snow is in screaming labor, and many of us know how much fun that can be. Meanwhile, the evil queen is making her way to their castle just ahead of the cursed clouds. They can't get Snow to the wardrobe in time. She gives birth to Emma, and then she realizes that they have to send her alone and give her her best chance, which is just heartbreaking. And I'm going to say that as a mother myself, I'm sorry, but I would not have been able to do that. And honestly, watching Snow cry in the moment after Charming takes Emma away is just so powerful. I tear up every time. That's how real they, the creators and writers, and especially Jennifer Goodwin, of course, made that moment for me. It's extremely powerful. Charming takes Emma to the wardrobe, fighting off the evil queen's knights, getting cut and stabbed in the process. But he manages to get baby Emma to the wardrobe, and she is sent through to our world, which is the last thing that Prince Charming sees before he passes out. So for this part, the commentators discussed how they really liked how Lana Parrilla truly let out the depth of her character. She has true meaning behind her hatred. The next thing they mentioned during this part was that Emma had her baby blanket on the back of her chair in the apartment, and Granny was knitting it in the war room scene. Up next is that they wanted to show Prince Charming's love for his child when he didn't want to let her go before the curse. But just as he put his faith in Snow, she is returning that faith and handing Emma to him to take her to the wardrobe. That was Josh Dallas's quote-unquote Kira moment. Baby in one hand, sword in the other. Charming had faith that Emma would find them, and he showed that in the moment of putting her in the wardrobe, and that's where lies the question, is Henry telling the truth? They originally thought to kill off Prince Charming, but then quickly realized that if they did, Snow wouldn't have been able to find her happy ending. We go back to find Emma and Henry at his castle, and he has a clear view of the clock tower. She gives him back his book, they chat, he tells her that he knows why she gave him up, and that was the same reason her parents gave her up, because she wanted him to have his best chance. And this is also the moment when Henry tells Emma that her mom is Snow White. She then tells him that he's right, and then also throws in that his best chance is not with her. It's a very heart-touching moment, but then Emma says that they need to go. Henry starts to tell Emma that he doesn't want to go back home, asks her to stay for a week. She doesn't know what it's like, and then Emma starts to tell Henry how her life has been, and she also tells Henry that he's lucky to have a mother that wants him. Henry then goes to tell Emma what really happened to her as a baby with the wardrobe, and that her parents were trying to save her from the curse. Emma's like, sure, but is clearly just trying to brush it off so that they can leave. So for this scene, the commentators discussed that Emma continued to call Henry kid as a way to keep her wall up, but Henry, being as determined as he is, continues to push at that wall, and Emma calling him Henry while they were at his castle was essentially Emma letting him in, partially due to the fact that Henry is smart enough to ease her guilt about giving him up. This is also where you really start to see just how hard her life has truly been. Emma telling Henry about what her life has been like is an Easter egg, basically, to some plot points that will come into play later on in the story. And also here they pointed out that Henry has faith, but Emma was basically denying it. Fade back to the story. Snow finds Charming on the floor passed out. She's crying, kisses him to try and wake him up, but he's not coming to. And then the one and only evil queen walks in, all powerful and strong like. Tells Snow the reason why she's casting the curse is because it's her happy ending. They then learn that Emma escaped, Snow's faith is restored, and then the powerful curse hits, shattering the ceilings, windows, and walls all around them. And then we're back in Storybrooke. During this part, the only thing that I'm going to bring up about what the commentator said was that they really just wanted to show the evil queen winning and coming in and laughing at Snow, basically, and you really see that faith has been restored in Snow White once she realizes that Emma made it. She's been protected from the curse. Back to the story, Emma is bringing Henry back home and then begins to open up to Regina again about the wish that she made on her birthday, and that was to not be alone on that day. But then Henry showed up and Regina immediately backfires with telling him that she has not been invited back into Henry's life, that she has been there raising him, he is her son, and that she will destroy Emma if she doesn't leave town. Emma comes back at Regina with something she wasn't expecting. Emma has her special ability to be able to tell if someone is lying, so she asks Regina if she loves Henry, but when she answers, Emma knows Regina is not being truthful. The commentators discuss that the 108 on Regina's door is indeed referring back to Lost, having to push the button every 108 minutes. They also discussed how they really wanted us to see Emma use her ability to tell when people are lying, and this was where Emma thinks she's having a real moment of connection with Regina. But Regina lets it be known that that won't happen. She has been there for Henry, not Emma, so this really is just, yes, she may be the evil queen, but she's right. She has been there for Henry, and she is indeed his mother. Emma's punch back in the scene, of course, was her asking Regina the truth about her love for him. Next, we find Regina looking over Henry as he lay in his bed. She is holding his book and has a very intense look on her face. Then she goes downstairs to stare at herself into a mirror for a moment, and she kind of smirks while she's holding that book. Two things about the commentators real quick. The swans and the nightlight. I really hope you all saw them. If not, go back and rewatch it. It's a wonderful thing to spot. And they also tease the idea of the mirror, and it really makes you wonder if Regina is aware and if everything that Henry's been saying is true. After that, we see Miss Mary Margaret Blanchard in the hospital with flowers she is bringing around to the bedside tables of those who are sick. One of those people are in a separate room, and we quickly recognize him to be Prince Charming. So for this part, the commentators discussed that they really wanted you to feel that even though Snow and Charming are in the position that they are in, there is still hope that they will one day be reunited. I thought that was beautiful. Back to the story. Then we see Henry looking out his window at the clock tower, and up next is Emma walking to Granny's bed and breakfast. The people who we know to be Granny and Red, she is known as Ruby and Storybrooke, are arguing and are both taken by surprise when Emma tells Granny that she'd like to stay in a room. As soon as she tells Granny her name, Emma Swan, the one and only Mr. Gold appears right behind her, repeats her name, and compliments her on it. He then collects some money from Granny and tells Emma to enjoy her stay. Emma is then told that he owns the entire town and is given the key to her room. At that moment, Henry watches the clock tower tick for the very first time, and he smiles the biggest, most adorable smile. For this last part, the commentators discuss the subtle hint to the curse, as in the no one can leave town and when they do, bad things happen line from Henry. But he's right, because when Ruby was planning to leave Storybrooke for Boston, Granny had a heart attack that prevented her from leaving. So it's not necessarily a force field, it's circumstances transpire in such a way that even if they do actually cross the town line, something bad happens and they end up going back. Gold seems to be in control of a lot of things, so they wanted you to question if he knows the truth as well, and he seems to act a little different when he hears Emma's name. That moment Emma takes the key and agrees to stay in town is the very moment that the clock begins to tick, as we all know. And that is the end of the pilot episode to the show we all love so much, Once Upon a Time. But don't you worry, I'm not done talking yet. Up next, we are going to go over those talking points that I wanted to discuss with you all. Okay, up first, favorite line. I actually couldn't decide between three, so I figured that I don't have to choose, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you them all. The first is when Henry and Emma are riding in the car on their way to Storybrooke. They're talking about the book. Emma says, just because you believe something doesn't make it true, and then Henry comes back with, that's exactly what makes it true. That is just perfect. Flawless. The second part would have to be when Rumpelstiltskin was yelling back at Snow and Charming as they were leaving, and he was saying, I want her name, I need her name. He was practically barking it through those jail cells, and I wonder if that was actually their intention. But then the way he goes, Missy, you know I'm right. Robert Carlyle executed that perfectly, just as he does absolutely everything else in this show. And last but not least would have to be when Emma and Henry are getting back in the bug after having just talked to Archie, and Henry goes, I'm not Pinocchio, and Emma goes, of course not, because that would be ridiculous. It was just a really fun moment between them that I truly appreciated, and I loved everything about it. Next talking point was going to be that stained glass behind Snow and Charming during the wedding ceremony. How beautiful was that? I mean, all the color, the light, it really just made that scene for me. Like, I thought her dress was beautiful, but once you really get a look at that stained glass, it's gorgeous. Next, if you notice when Regina first comes into the grand hall where Snow and Charming are having the wedding ceremony, she's got her hands lowered by her side, but they also kind of look like she's holding the train to her dress. But if you notice, she's not actually touching it, it's just up in the air, as if she or something is holding it in place like that. And I'm not sure what it is, but I just thought that was a fun little detail. The Evil Queen's hair extensions are gorgeous, but I bet they were also very heavy and a bit of a headache. Meeting Emma for the first time in her quote-unquote date night outfit and the way she played that guy like a fiddle, oh my god, how clever was that? I have a question about that part too. Did they know when writing and filming this scene that they would use the same lines for when Emma is tracked down later on in the show when they're showing more of her past with the whole let me guess who you are ordeal? Or was that something that they decided on later? Did Emma use that line on everyone she went looking for? Just a curious little thought I had. I also love how she called the guy Charming too. Of all possible things she could have called this guy, she decides to go with Charming. I mean, come on. We also get to see just how strong Emma really is physically. I mean, she straight slammed that guy's head into the steering wheel of his own car. And take a look at her muscles. Like, honestly, that woman is strong. Snow tells us right before 11 minutes that the mysterious he she wanted to go see, whom we all know to be Rumpelstiltskin, that he sees the future. They just gave away something that is so huge and ends up becoming a major plot point right here in the pilot episode. How exciting is that? Okay, so the way Rumpelstiltskin got down from the ceiling of his cell in the dungeon was very nice and a clever touch, and I just loved it so much. And can I also add in that we all know the reason why Rumpelstiltskin is locked up in that dungeon in the first place, and that is because Snow White, Prince Charming, Cinderella, Prince Thomas, and a few others all aided in getting him in there. So why is the guard instructing them on what to do? It wouldn't have mattered anyways because he already knows who they are. Did they just not have that plan yet at this point and simply didn't want to give too much away, so we as the audience are left questioning as we watch the first episode of the show, have they met before? Obviously we know that they have, but thinking about it from the perspective of when we were first-time viewers, were we really meant to ask ourselves that question in that moment? I probably dove a little too deep into that, but that's kind of the point of this, right? We're diving deep and having fun. Snow took Rumpel's words very seriously down there in that cell. She was listening to him very intensely, and now we know the real reason why. that is because in that moment, Snow White knew he was indeed looking into the future. I thought that was really interesting because if you truly see the look on her face, based on everything that she already knows about him, she knows that number one, he's not lying, and number two, whatever he says, she really needs to pay close attention to it because it's going to be something incredibly important. The next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about would have to be whenever Rumple was screaming at Snow and Charming as they were leaving the mine, wanting to know what Emma's name was. I really liked the way that they edited that because you can just see how badly he really wanted to get that information from them. Obviously, based on what he says right there, we are automatically to assume that the final battle will start whenever Emma comes to town, right? We're so totally wrong on that. But see, what I want to know is if they actually had this whole ordeal with the final battle planned out from the very beginning. How much did they know was going to happen as they were writing this show and figuring out all those minor details? But as we all know, those details aren't quite so minor. Next talking point would have to be Archie and Howe when he told Henry that stuff about giving into your dark side is the exact same thing that he tells to Prince Charming in the war room scene. And I'm sure that was intentional, but honestly, I really like the way they do that. I don't know what it is, but something about this show just continues to pull you in. No matter how many times you've seen an episode or no matter how many times you've rewatched a specific scene, it pulls you in every single time. And that is the brilliance behind it. Okay, back to our talking points. So obviously I brought up earlier that Regina is by far my favorite character, and I think that simply has to do with her character development. We eventually find out in the show that she certainly is not all black and white. She has so many colors, and there's so much depth to every single one of those colors. She is way more complex than good or evil. It's not that simple. We all know that. Alright, y'all. Blue's outfit, I thought it was super cute, and I love the way that those little tassel things just kind of hang down from her skirt. It's too cute. And her wings, I love her wings. They are so beautiful. So the next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was whenever Henry was saying, his mom is evil and she only pretends to love him, but whenever she comes outside and she runs and hugs him and she looks like she's been crying. Was that genuine, or was she just saving face for the sheriff? And speaking of Sheriff Graham, oh my god, that man is gorgeous. We all know, okay? There ain't no denying it. And look at that beard, too. Oh my goodness. I am most certainly going to bring up the fact that Emma did not drink a lot while at Regina's. In fact, she really didn't even drink enough to impair anything. So, I got two questions about that. First off, why did she wake up in a jail cell? Second, did they even take her to the hospital to check her out and make sure she was okay? I really want to know. I do have another serious question for you guys, and that is going to have to be, why wasn't Emma able to tell Regina was lying to her when she said that she had no idea what Emma was talking about in regards to Henry knowing, well, the truth? I genuinely want to know the answer to this, because is it just one of those things where, like, she really has to be focusing, like she really has to be trying, or is it just one of those things that comes natural to her, second nature? Like, I don't know, cover in your mouth whenever you cough or whenever you sneeze. Eventually we do it so many times it becomes second nature. So if she was really that good at telling whether or not people were lying to her, isn't it basically second nature by now? And how come she couldn't tell in that point? I'm just curious. Genuinely. I also have to say about that particular moment whenever Emma and Regina were in that room talking was the way that Emma looked up at Regina whenever Regina got up very quickly to let Emma out. Like, I'm sorry, but that was funny. It was too perfect. Who else thinks that it wasn't necessarily smart of Emma to basically tell Regina that Henry knows the truth about everything, and that he's already been telling Emma about it? It could just be my opinion, but I don't necessarily think that was very smart of Emma, which I know, at that time she didn't know Regina, but still, that's precisely my point. You don't know this woman. How do you know you can trust her with something like that? So I also have to point out to you guys that the colors in the sky whenever Grumpy and Sleepy are keeping watch for the curse, that was just beautiful. I have no idea how they managed to actually get all of that color in there, just as with the stained glass, but it was just absolutely gorgeous. And the way that they interpreted that color into, interpreted the purple and the blues into that curse cloud, pure genius. It was just beautiful. Alright, you guys, so I actually am going to need your help a little bit with this one. So whenever Emma was in the jail cell and Geppetto, aka Marco, was talking to her and he was telling her the story of, him and his wife and how they tried to have a kid, but he said it was not meant to be. Now, whenever I watched it, I heard he was not meant to be. Now, it could just be partially due to his accent, and maybe I just misunderstood things. But whenever I rewound it, I could have swore to you I heard he say he was not meant to be, not it was not meant to be. I really wondered if they did that on purpose, and to also kind of sort of throw a hint at us that he is Geppetto. And I also really liked how they had him fixing something in the background while Regina, the sheriff, and Emma were all talking. I thought that was very clever. He's the town handyman. What else is he supposed to do? Okay, the way that Miss Blanchard continued to stare at Emma whenever they first met, I can't get over this. Ginnifer Goodwin is so talented. She played this off so well, like she was truly looking at essentially her daughter. It was fantastic. Another thing too, the wedding ring that Snow is wearing in this episode doesn't necessarily appear to be the same ring we see her soon with, unless they of course either had to turn it upside down, or maybe they were just working on how exactly they wanted that ring to look. I'm not sure about this one yet, but I am very curious, and I'm hoping that we soon get an answer in one of those commentary episodes. It's possible that we won't though. I'm not necessarily gonna get my hopes up, but that's just another thing that I was a little bit curious about. Once again, I have to compliment Ginnifer Goodwin. I really feel like she played the role of giving birth absolutely flawlessly. And the fact that she was walking to find Charming right after she gave birth, wow. Just wow. So the scene where Charming is passed out and Regina, she enters in all powerful and happy, the curse is just shattering the ceilings, the windows, the walls. That effect, the way that they did all that, it looked absolutely incredible. I was truly amazed at how well of a job they did, because as we get to see, she is literally swallowed by that storm cloud, and all that glass, broken glass, is just shattering all around her. How did she not get cut? I mean, come on. A couple more things during that scene too. Regina's face whenever she heard that baby Emma got away, the anger that she displayed, and how it was just so real, you truly felt it through the screen. And that is one of the many reasons why she will continue to be my top favorite character, because any expression really that she displays on her face, you truly feel that. You truly feel her emotion. And we all know that there's some incredible depth to it. We just haven't seen it yet. And we don't yet know why. Or do we? Okay, so if you will notice too, in the background there is a lion and a Minnie Mouse behind Snow when she is sitting on the floor next to Prince Charming and she is holding him. I thought that was a very wonderful detail. Obviously we know the Minnie Mouse. The lion, I couldn't tell which story that was supposed to be from, so if any of you out there know, feel free to go ahead and email me. I have to say too, I didn't notice this in my earlier watchings of this here first episode, but when Emma and Henry were walking away from his castle and then Henry grabbed Emma's hand, I really liked that little detail. I thought that it was beautiful, and I really loved that they threw it in there. He was reaching out to her, and she accepted. So I had pretty much pieced together a little something else too, as I'm sure all of you out there listening probably have as well. But I just wanted to talk to you guys about this. So how did Regina not piece together sooner that this is indeed the very same Emma that got away right before the curse hit? Wouldn't she have questioned that as soon as she found out Emma's name? Personally, I believe that she simply didn't want to believe it at the time, but later on down the road it seems to become more and more obvious to her, and she has no choice but to face that truth. That's just one of the things that I absolutely love about the show. Regina has to face a lot, and it truly affects her character. I absolutely love the fact that the flowers Mary and Margaret were putting on the bedside tables were all white. Meeting Granny and Ruby continued to move the position of her scarf, and I couldn't help but to notice that. I have so much love for both of their characters, and I can't wait to dive deeper into that whenever the time comes. But I thought that was a really fun thing, she just kept on fidgeting with her scarf, and at one point she really looked like Little Red Riding Hood. And I must say too, that desk sure was dusty whenever Granny slammed her book down on it. I'm not sure if any of you out there listening noticed this tiny little detail, but whenever Granny handed Emma the key to her room, there was a swan on it. This next one here, I'm going to state it as a question, even though if you're like me, you already know the answer to it. But here you go. When Mr. Gold heard Emma say her name in Granny's shop, did he wake up from the curse? Something to think about if you haven't already. Near the very end, we get to see Henry looking out of his window at the clock tower, and is it just me or does he always seem to have the perfect view of it at the perfect times? I suppose it's not just him, but still, it starts out with him. And of course, we all know that as soon as he saw that clock tower tick, that was the very same moment his birth mother decided to stay in town for him. I have to say too, just by watching the first episode, it's incredible how genuine the actors and actresses' portrayals of their characters are, and the talent is just purely amazing. The last thing I wanted to bring up to you guys is, someone please tell me that those are swan feathers on like all of Snow's dresses in the episode? This is what else I was thinking about keeping track of, is how many of Snow's dresses or clothes in general have feathers on them. I thought that was a really interesting little detail, and please, if you're out there listening, and if you know what kind of feathers those are, email me and let me know. onceuponaSpoilerPod@gmail.com, please, because I really want to know. I'm not about to Google it, because I don't want the Google to lie to me, so you got to know the truth. Please tell me the truth, I want to know. Oh god. Okay, and with that, we are done discussing my talking points for this episode. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have the open title scene that we all know and love, but starting next week, we will be keeping track of what they have hidden behind those trees. I did find this video on YouTube about the costume designer, Eduardo Castro. He is an absolute genius, and all of his work is just phenomenal. So, I wanted to share with you some stuff that they talked about in that YouTube video. Starting off with the fact that Eduardo is the one who came to the realization that Rumplestiltskin is indeed a living crocodile. How cool is that? Snow's wedding dress was actually the first dress that they designed for the series. And they also mentioned in the video that Regina's costumes were fun and very special for them to create, seeing as how they really had to keep track of her story and where she was at emotionally so that her wardrobe would reflect that. And speaking of Regina, as soon as they saw Lana, they immediately knew which direction to take her costumes. Everyone absolutely loves their costumes. They truly help to make the show and the characters come to life. We will continue to discuss wardrobe and more things along the way, but for now, that's what I wanted to go ahead and share with you. And that just about wraps up our very first podcast episode of Once Upon a Spoiler. I don't want to close this out yet. I'm just incredibly excited to continue this journey with you all. There's so much that I want to and absolutely cannot wait to discuss with you all. I truly can't thank you enough for listening. If you would like to, please share with me some of your favorite lines or scenes from this episode. Feel free to send me any questions you may have, or if you would like to let me know if I missed something in the background. It's always fun to look and see what kind of Easter eggs we can find and what exactly they have hidden back there. I do want to go ahead and throw in real quick that I will be doing my best not to curse during these here podcast episodes. If I do at all while recording, it's typically because I fumbled with my words, but I cut that out anyways. However, when people like my fiance come on to co-host the show with me, I'll be using special effect noises to cover that up. Alright, my beautiful butterflies, flap those gorgeous wings and let's celebrate this beautiful life together. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Once Upon a Spoiler. Please join me next Tuesday as we discuss Season 1, Episode 2 of the wonderful series Once Upon a Time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at onceuponaSpoilerPod@gmail.com. Again, that's onceuponaSpoilerPod@gmail.com. Use the subject line to reference which episode. Add in your first name if you want me to say it on this here podcast, or if you wish to remain anonymous, and I'll go through, pull some at random to be discussed for our specially dedicated butterfly episodes. Thanks again for joining me, and I wish you all a most wonderful week.